6 times software houses did knockoffs of the arcade. A nice little learner. The early days of home computers were filled with knockoffs of arcade games. Pac-Man, all sorts of things, Centipede. Lots and lots of software houses basically built themselves on using other people's IP to produce games for the systems they published for. And we're going to look at 6 such examples today, although quite frankly it could have been 60 and I still wouldn't have been short of games. Ocean were the kings of official licensed games from the mid-80s onwards, right up to their demise, in fact, and takeover by Infogrames. But the company that gave us an official version of Mario Brothers also did an unofficial version of Donkey Kong. Now, Donkey Kong was already officially on home micros. Here's the official superb VIC-20 version. Came on cartridge, really good, and it really has an authentic arcade feel on the humble 5K micro. So with 48K you could do far better, right? Well, let's see what Ocean can do with Kong. How high can you get? How high indeed? Donkey Kong there. Well, I assume it's Donkey Kong. He's, well, the first thing that strikes you is the cacophony of noise. And the jumping mechanism is awful. Yes, it's a very quick cash-in on Donkey Kong. You can eventually master the jumping, but I'm slightly transfixed by Donkey Kong and his peephole bra on the top right there. And, well, if we're talking about things that aren't licensed, I don't think that version of Congratulations has been licensed from Cliff Richard either. Level 2, so we have some flames. And the noise! It does not stop. And I'm just having to turn the audio down because it's so bad. And Donkey Kong now fires an arrow down towards you on this level. I mean, there's plenty to do. And you would think this is a 16K game, but no, apparently this would take the 16K to breaking point. So all 4 screens of this game require 48K. This is the final level when old Kong is standing up the top there. And then I think I've managed to complete that level by walking over the platforms. Get a bonus. And then Kong, with a hole in his back, falls down. And it all starts again, but faster. The noise! Oh, it's a dreadful version of Donkey Kong. One best avoided. Funny to think that Ocean built their entire licensed gaming empire on this dross. Punch-Out was a Nintendo arcade game, an innovative 2-screen setup, one above the other, that made it stand out in the arcade. It's a boxing game. And unfortunately, I can't capture any footage from it because I can't get it working. But you've probably seen it, and certainly Elite had, because the coders of Frank Bruno's Boxing were sent down to the arcade with a bag full of 10p's and told to play the game all day, then come back and start coding a boxing game like it. And that's exactly what they did. You play Frank Bruno, who has been shoehorned into this game, and you basically fight from behind the protagonist against a variety of, well, slight racial stereotypes. In some cases, came out on the Amstrad Spectrum C64 and C16. Gameplay's the same on all of them. This is the C64 version, where Frank Bruno looks even less like Frank Bruno on the top right-hand corner. Look, I mean, when you're behind him, he doesn't have hair, but on the screen on the top right-hand side, he has hair. There's even a C16 version, which is very similar to the C64 version, except there's less fighters and a bit more loading. You load the entire game to play one fighter, basically. But Elite used to do these games on the C16, and wow, they managed to fit more in to the C16 than Ocean managed to fit into 48K with Kong. It's an extremely blatant rip-off. There's no two ways about it. You put these two games side by side in a courtroom. And, well, no jury is going to find that they're not. One hasn't been inspired, at least, by the other. Pac-Man, a staple of rip-offs. And a game that endures to this day. There isn't a handheld joystick all-in-one thing that doesn't have a copy of Pac-Man on it. And let's go over to Mastertronic, who had Gnasher by Jonathan Nixon. So what do you get in terms of an unlicensed game for £1.99? Well, apparently you get a game that can load and save your previous high scores. So bonus points for that. It's unnecessarily chunky for the Spectrum, isn't it, really? I don't know what the monster's supposed to be. I mean, jellyfish? Okay, everyone had a different variation of Pac-Man, but I would have thought Specky would be able to manage something a bit higher resolution. It makes the game harder because, although I think you've got one less ghost, haven't you? The ghosts, they all home in on you. They all act in the same way, unlike in Pac-Man where all the ghosts do different things. And you reach the limits of the game very, very quickly. Okay, it's an early budget game. But the only problem is there are so many other clones of Pac-Man around, you're wondering why you're playing this when you could be playing one of the others. Even some of the typing ones are better than this. The controls don't respond particularly well. You have to hold the joystick at all times, unlike in Pac-Man where you just tap the joystick and you carry on moving. It all feels compressed down. And okay, in the early days of budget games, you may not have complained about this, but yeah, even if you bought this a year later and found it in the newsagent, you'd have been pretty disappointed. Now, we talked about Ocean, and one of Ocean's first licensed games was Hunchback, which I had huge success with. And as you can see on the screen, here's the arcade version. Everyone knows Hunchback, right? But what happens if you can't clone Hunchback exactly because Ocean had bought out their version? Well, Mr. Micro had an idea, and it's Punchy. Yes, it's Hunchback, but with Punch and Judy. Here we are on the Amstrad version. You play a policeman, and you have to get to the end of the screen to rescue the baby, whilst avoiding the things that get thrown at you, which are theatrically themed, such as pies and tomatoes. Or rotten tomatoes, presumably, are going to be thrown at you. Published by Amsoft on the CPC, but it came out on lots of different computers, including the VIC-20. And the mechanic remains the same in all of these versions, except you don't get the annoying music at the end of each level on the VIC, and the VIC also seems to have less screens. Also a C16 version, a C64 version, and which I think would have been the originating system, the Spectrum version, which is one of the first games you may have heard speech in. Well, at least Greensleeves is out of copyright. Tiny, tiny sprite. I don't actually know what that speech is saying. Watch the baby, watch the baby? It's all very jerky, and bear in mind, for this money, you could actually have the official Hunchback conversion from Ocean, which makes this seem rather, well, rotten. Although, when I was talking to people on Twitter about this, there seems to be quite a few fans of the Spectrum version of Punchy. But one person said they were completely terrified their Spectrum was speaking to them. For a blatant rip-off, at least Punchy tries to vary the theme a little bit, although, as I said, you could just go and buy Hunchback for the same money. Everyone loves a bit of Moon Patrol, don't they? So, hey, here's Ocean with Moon Alert. At least they didn't call it Moon, like they did with Kong, or Alert. Ready Player One. And off we go. And it's a completely straightforward rip-off of Moon Patrol. Of course, there are many versions of Moon Patrol. Even Lunar Jetman kind of borrows this theme, doesn't it? That said, it's far better than Kong. And it basically a straight copy of the arcade. Occasionally aliens will arrive and you have to shoot them. And sometimes you have to shoot the aliens and jump over things and shoot things at the ground level at the same time. This is a much more competent game than Kong, or indeed anything else we've seen so far. It actually feels... Okay, it's blatant. It's a blatant rip-off. But it's like buying a supermarket own brand of a product and then finding out it's just as good as one of the big names. Now, Kong was a big hit for Ocean, so they decided to bring out a sequel, Kong Strikes Back. And you'll be thinking, Nintendo never did a game called Donkey Kong Strikes Back, so what do we have here? Let's fire it up and then I'll show you. Ocean presents Kong Strikes Back. There's some jolly music. And there's Donkey Kong top right hand corner with a big pair of breasts. And yes, it's Mr. Do's Wild Ride with Donkey Kong. Oh, Donkey Kong shoehorned into it on the top right. Yeah, it's the strangest of the Mr. Do games, the one that often gets forgotten. And yeah, if we cross back to the CPC, they've even copied the level layout, excluding the ball things that close around you at some points. I'm still amazed at Donkey Kong and his Samantha Fox look. That's something. That's something. Oh, just he's got nipples. Oh, it's if you wanted a version of Mr. Do's Wild Ride on the CPC Spectrum on C64, yes, Ocean have given you one, and it's called Kong Strikes Back. It's just not quite the game. If you're expecting a kind of Donkey Kong game, it's really not Donkey Kong. I can't stop looking at him. I can't stop looking at him. Yeah, I like Mr. Do's Wild Ride, and I think it's great there's a version here on the Amstrad, but goodness me, I think Ocean thought they might not get caught if they called it something else, because who was going to look for Mr. Do's Wild Ride? So yes, the early days of home computing was a Wild West, and the likes of Ocean and Elite built their empires on basically nicking other people's IP and producing rip-off games. And when they made enough money from that, they went on to do official games. And well, that's one way of doing business, I suppose, isn't it? Kong is a terrible knockoff. It's awful. Frank Bruno's boxing is fun enough. Frank has been shoehorned into it at the last possible moment. And again, if this ever ended up in court back in the day, I don't see how they could defend this just being a blatant rip-off of the Nintendo original arcade game. Gnasher is one of hundreds of Pac-Man clones. It's not particularly good. It's all too squashed up, and the Spectrum can do far better than this. Punchy is actually an entertaining take on Hunchback in a way of getting around the fact that Ocean have got the official Hunchback license. I don't particularly care for it, but judging by what people say on Twitter, some people do have fond memories, and certainly that speech on the Spectrum version really does make it stand out. Moon Alert is a very competent Moon Patrol clone. I had quite a lot of fun playing with it. It's a blatant rip-off. I can't believe it's not butter, basically. Kong Strikes Back is one way of getting Mr. Do's Wild Ride onto the Spectrum Amstrad and C64. I can't quite get over the look of Kong in this game. Yeah, but yeah, if you like Mr. Do's Wild Ride, then check it out, because actually it's a decent enough port. A few things missing, but yeah, should have just been an official Mr. Do game, really. Thanks for watching ChinnyVision and staying with me this far. If you like the channel, remember to subscribe and click that bell notification thing and all that other stuff that I'm supposed to say but I'm not going to. See you soon.